So the other day, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole, and I have a bad habit of really binging hard on things. So I try not to go and binge anything because before I know it, it's 3 in the morning and I have to go to work in the morning. But since it's COVID and there's not a whole lot going on, I recently I binged a couple documentaries and I went down a bit of a rabbit hole related to cults. And I just have to say, I have a lot of questions about the shit that I saw. So I invited the one person that I know that knows more about cults than anybody that I know and has a real passion for these types of things and true crime stories. So with that, I want to bring on a frequent guest of the TTE podcast, my sister Denise. Denise, how are we?
I'm ready to talk about some cults, Holmes.
Yeah, you are my resident expert when it comes to all things cults and true crime stories because I just have questions. And I want to start off by saying I have questions about the cults and a variety of them. I was really taken with the experience of not just dismissing a cult altogether as most people do. I was really taken with the idea that smart, rational, thoughtful people got a hold of this and then suspended all logic and reality. And then they reached one of two conclusions, maybe three conclusions. One, they believed it all the way to the end. Two, they believed it to a point but couldn't get out. Or three, they believed it until they questioned it and then they were able to get out. And I'm fascinated by the journey of how deep people get into this. So so the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about two of them. And the first one I want to talk about is Heaven's Gate. And
Yes.
so Heaven's
Personal favorite.
Gate, it was a documentary that I saw. It was in 4 parts, and I just
Wait,
have
wait,
so
wait,
many.
wait. Wait. I don't mean to say that it's like a personal favorite, personal favorite. I'm just saying that like it's a great story. Anyway, continue.
Okay, so I want to start with Heaven's Gate, but before we get too deep into it, I think what I want to do is give you the floor for a minute and just explain to people what exactly was Heaven's Gate. What exactly at like a 10,000 foot level? Like, what was Heaven's Gate? What did they believe? Sort of, what was the premise? Like, can you fill people in on the background of what exactly Heaven's Gate? What did they believe? The followers of Heaven's Gate, what did they believe?
Okay, so Heaven's Gate. Um, how's the best way to describe it with the time allotted? A cult in which two people, Marshall Applewhite, and then a lady by the name of Betty Nettles, and basically they believed that that your life here on Earth was going to end sooner rather than later, and that if you wanted to transcend and like meet God, you basically are you got to leave Earth, but you got to in order to leave Earth, you got to die. So their teaching was that when the next Haley Bop comet came through, they were just going to hop on.
And hold on,
In
now
order for
pause for a second.
what?
When is the Haley's Bop comet? Like, I want, like, let's give people a time frame here. Like when exactly does this take place?
So the Haley Bop comet only occurs every so many years, and if I can remember, the Hale Bop comet comes like once every 18 months. No, I take that back. I have to look it up again. But it's supposed to come every so often, and it's been coming over and over again for millennia. And so essentially they thought, you know what, we're gonna leave Earth. It's gonna be great. We're gonna jump on this comet. We're gonna transcend, and then when we get to the other side, when they get to the other side, then I guess that's heaven. But one thing I will mention, the name Heaven's Gate is what we call Heaven's Gate. The cult itself never actually had a real name. Like, they never associated themselves with Heaven's Gate. They never had an actual name. But for those who know about it and have talked to other, that were in it, and talked with Marshall Applewhite and Betty Nettles, like, nobody referred to each other as Heaven's Gate cult members. That's just the name of the website.
Okay. So Heaven's I just have so many questions. I just don't even really sort of know where to begin with. The one thing I will say before I get into my questions, just to be clear, these people believed that the human body is really akin to a caterpillar, that you would shed this sort of earthly human body and assume an alien persona, and then you would ascend into heaven via a spaceship. That's what that's what they believed. And so
I was trying to leave the alien part out because some folks just
no. That's part of the batshit craziness of this particular documentary. So now I have questions. So first, my first sort of thing is, or let me say, takeaway or observation as I watched it, was these folks had been around since the early to mid 70s, up in Northwest America, specifically like the upper Northwest, like Oregon, state of Washington, like that part of the country. And you mentioned the names Marshall Applewhite and Betty Nettles. So my first question is, and I want you to explain this to me because I really struggled with this. They are known within their group, because I'm not going to call it a cult, because I'm just going to say it's a belief system.
Sure.
They went by the names T and Doe. And
that is one of the names that they went by. They started out as calling each other the Two.
Yes, the Two. and then it turns into T and Doe. And so I didn't understand where T and Doe came from. And then as I'm watching the documentary, they explain where it came from. And this is my first sort of what the fuck moment, where it's like, you are going to believe these people who are calling themselves T and Doe, but they got the names T and Doe from the Sound of Music.
Yes. So little Bo Peep and Doe a deer, a female deer,
and so I struggle with this because I'm saying to myself, so you believe you're going to ascend into heaven on a spaceship, but you took your names from a musical.
That would be correct.
And I really struggle with, how did we get from A to B?
Well, here's the thing about cults. Logic does not apply here. So you have to look at it from a sense of that's their truth, and you have to understand how they came about in their own personal lives.
Well, that's why I'm here. I'm here to talk to you about how they came about to this, because I'm struggling how two people who change their names to T and Doe believe they're going to ascend into heaven on a spaceship. I'm struggling here.
Well, for one thing, the early life of Marshall Applewhite and Betty Nettles are not as known as, say, the early life of, Jim Jones or the head of the New Wabian Nation. Like, you don't. what we know about Marshall Applewhite is that he was a closet. Well, he was a closeted gay man who grew up in a family where his father was a Presbyterian minister who expected his son to go into religion just like he did. He went to seminary school for like 6 months, dropped out, and as he lived his life, he was in a constant flux of figuring out what he should be doing with his life. And when he runs into Betty Nettles being a nurse, and in the middle of a divorce, she was really into the alien stuff. It wasn't Marshall Applewhite that was into the alien stuff. It was Betty. And really, when you think about it, these are just two people. You have one person who is completely lost and has no idea what kind of identity to live by in Marshall Applewhite. And then he meets a woman that's completely into aliens and conspiracies and all of that. And she essentially, you could almost say that Marshall Applewhite was her first victim, because let's face it, a lot of the things that they believed in is in basis from Betty Nettles.
Okay, pause for a second. Because one of the things that I saw was he has some sort of psychotic episode, and that's where they meet, is in a psychiatric hospital where she's the nurse and he's the patient.
The story is that it was a psychiatric episode, and that it was a psychiatric hospital. For what I understand, it was not an actual psychiatric hospital. It was just a regular old hospital. And whether or not it was a psychiatric episode, it's debated. Some people say he had a drug overdose. Other people say it was a psychotic episode. For whatever it is, he was in the hospital and he met this chick.
Okay, so these people start like sending flyers out through the neighborhoods, like, do you want to try to find a better way to live your life, and this, that, and the third, and do you believe in UFOs? If so, come to the meeting hall at 7:30 on Tuesday, and we'll explain everything. If you want to send into heaven, this is the way to go, and the whole nine. And they start to attract people. And I think it's important to put in context what's going on at the time, where people are, this is the 70s, and people are looking for, and people are always looking, but in the 70s, this is the way the documentary portrayed it, that people were looking for sort of a higher plane of existence, like what does life mean, and looking for this deep meaning and all this kind of stuff. So they started to attract people. And one of the things I found fascinating about this and the other one is they all seem to have a belief system, and they all have like a hierarchy, and they have a belief system and a set of rules that they all follow. And for me, for Heaven's Gate, some of it seemed plausible, and other things were just like was like a bridge too far. But the most extreme thing that they did, where they talked about the idea of you need to be celibate, like you need to look at the members of the group as like your equal, you shouldn't be lusting after them, and all these sexual feelings and whatnot. And they went so far as to, and this is really the batshit crazy part, where I was like, I don't believe I just saw this, where they went so far as to recommend actual castration. And then one guy actually went through with it, but they didn't even go to the hospital. They just did it in a back room somewhere.
Yes. Now, I want it noted, though, yes, it sounds so crazy. And yes, one person did it. About 6 people in the cult did opt for the castration. Only 6. The rest of them said, nah, I'm cool.
But no, I don't care how many people signed up for it. I don't care. I don't care. Some dude cut his Johnson off. Like that's how deep this goes. Like, he cut his Johnson off. Like,
the idea was to not feel.
No. Stop that. Ain't a doctor around, and you just no anesthesia, no nothing. You just up in.
When your belief system.
Come on, fam.
When your beliefs.
No.
When your belief system transcends
and this
that
is why
irrational thought.
This is why we're talking, because this left the whole frame of reality for me. Like, I I can't get there, even though I know that like the human psyche can go a lot of different places. Like I get it, but come on, man,
Mhm.
he cut his Johnson off, bro.
Yeah,
Like, like,
I
what,
mean,
like, what is that?
it's a person who I mean, he was just that devoted. I mean, I'll put it this way, because you know you're coming in from just watching the documentary. I knew about Heaven's Gate from true crime and whatnot, and so on and so forth. But I listened to the podcast, last podcast on the left, and they do all kinds of cults and conspiracies and whatnot. And one thing that they explained in that podcast about Heaven's Gate was the one that only 6 people did do castration. Let's make that clear, y'all. Only 6 people, 6 of the 39 people that died did the castration. But one thing about Heaven's Gate that I don't know if the documentary pointed out for you is that this was not the kind of cult where like you got in and then you couldn't get out. This was the kind of cult where if you wanted out, Applewhite would let you out. In fact, he was known to like buy your bus ticket. Like if this isn't for you,
Yeah. Like that came through. Like there were people that was like, you know, struggling with the rules and all that, and he would tell them like,
mm-hmm.
okay, then you know maybe you know this isn't for you. You know, go do what you got to do, take your little sabbatical or whatever, and if you want to come back, you
Right.
come. And then some people did come back because I think the group provided like a level of structure.
Yes, like
For
there
their
was a story
lives.
of a person who left and he left for like 12 years and he came back because while he was gone, all of his experiences in life were all negative. People were rude, technology was getting out of control, and he just felt like the world itself just wasn't where it should be. So he ended up coming back and ended up dying with the rest of them. But there was one story about a guy who began in the cult in the early days, back in the 70s. He left his wife and his 4 children. He was a successful real estate developer, and they never said his name in the podcast that I was listening to, but he left his wife, his 4 kids, and some people you would think come back after a while, but this guy did not come back. And he was the one who set up everything from where they would meet, like, you know, in the early days, they would meet in parks and everything was word of mouth. So if you showed up to one meeting in a park and you, at that park is where you would get the info for the next one. So if you missed something and you go out into the world, into the field, whatever, because every time you would show up at these meetings, they'd give you more pamphlets and they'd tell you to go out into the world and spread the gospel and this is that, whatever. But if you miss the next meeting and everything's by word of mouth at a local park, now you're just in the wind and you don't even know what you're doing. So it's hard to stay in a cult when you can't even keep up with the cult itself. Because there's stories of people who actually were all the way in it, were just 100% about Heaven's Gate, but then they missed the meetings. And it got to the point where they actually would go and like go to like the police and be like, have you guys seen X, Y, and Z? Because these are our people, we looking for them. So who goes to the police saying, I can't find my cult? How do you lose your cult?
Well, you know, when you don't have any financial infrastructure, I guess you're resolved to doing talks
Not even that.
in the park.
It's not even that. You're meeting at public parks.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can remember being in college and these old men would like, as we're like walking to class in the morning, they had these boxes of like Bibles of like New Testament and they were passing them out left and right. Like the power of Christ compels you and this, that, and the third. And I remember people being rude to them. I would always take one because if I took one and then held it up, they would leave you alone after that. Like I wasn't rude to them or anything, but
you're nice.
Yeah, well, I try to be a good person.
I was not like that. I'd actually walk up to them and be like, so you read in like 17th century level telephone, right?
Yeah. Just now, one of the things I want to get into, and this is like I'm trying to walk down a certain path here, and this path is like at what point, do you like say to yourself, okay, this is a stop sign, this is a red flag, like what's going on? So one of the first things that I want to kind of talk about is Marshall and Betty. I'm just going to call them T and Doe because that's what they were known as.
Or you can call them Bo and Peep. They went by Bo and Peep as well.
See, this is the bullshit I'm talking about. I'm going to follow somebody that calls themselves T and Doe or Bo and Peep. Like, that's a red flag. Like, come on, fam. Come on,
Bo
fam.
And Peep,
you took
you know
it
where
from
Bo and Peep come from.
Listen. All I'm saying is
little Bo Peep. Bo Peep, little Bo Peep.
I get it, but I can't. How am I supposed to follow you into heaven when I'm believing that? So
because you know why? Because they talked about this is where they went in. This is where they get you. They get people that are Christians that are in a crisis of faith, and they tell them straight out, Jesus is not only your savior, he's also an alien.
See, that's what I'm talking about. It's like, stop right there. Like this is exactly what I'm getting in. This is exactly where I'm at. Because it's my understanding that they believed that they had been chosen to fulfill a biblical prophecy and that they had been given higher level minds than other people. So pause for a second. This starts to sound a lot like Branch Davidian and David Koresh a little bit. And I wouldn't call those guys a cult. But
I would.
I wouldn't call those guys a cult for me personally, but it's like, how can you be Jesus and wear glasses?
It's not even that. Like, how it's the bigger question. How can you call yourself a Messiah and be alive?
Yeah. You know what I mean? And so again, I'm just talking about these sort of red flags here where we've got T and Doe or Bo and Peep, and they believe that they are smarter than everybody else. Mm-hmm. And it's their job to round up all the people and take them into a spaceship and ascend into space and ultimately into heaven.
But here's the thing about what this is where this really doesn't make sense. And I know this is just going to set you off, but you know, Bo and Peep are supposed to be the ones that take you there, right? But what happens when poor Miss and Mrs. Nettles gets breast cancer and dies?
See, that's what I'm saying. Wait a minute. If you guys are who you claim to be, and then one of you dies of cancer, doesn't the rest of the group have to go? Come on, man.
Not even that. The way I always understood it was that, at least if I was a part of this cult, this is how I would have explained it. It's just that she went to make sure that the ship was ready.
But you don't do that by putting your body in the ground like that. Or getting cremated.
But here's the thing: for them, it wasn't about them. It wasn't about the physical manifestation of them going. They knew that their bodies had to die in order to get on the spaceship. They knew that. They knew they had to die in order to get to the other level. You weren't ready. You weren't ready for that, were you?
This is so. No, I saw that in the documentary too, and it was another red flag. And then another red flag is at some point they stopped going by T and Doe and Bo and Peep, and they start going by the two.
Well, the two came first. They first started going by as the two.
You know what I mean? Because that sounds ominous. Like the two.
Well, it's not even so much that it sounds ominous. It sounds, that's original. I mean.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking. Like, wait, what? The two? I mean, I'm still hung up on T and Doe. Like T and Doe really, that's like the ultimate red flag for me.
For me, it wasn't T and Doe, it was Bo Peep. Because they got it out of little Bo Peep. And for me, it was just like, it can't be that simple. It can never be that simple.
And then what I also found interesting was that once Betty dies, I guess she's Doe, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
So once she dies and Marshall takes over, all of a sudden they take a shift in terms of like what their beliefs are, and they become a little more hardcore. They become a little more fundamental in terms of you got to follow the rules and this, that, and the third. And that's when the castration showed up, because people were saying, I see so-and-so across the way and I'm feeling a certain type of way. You know what I mean? And then they're getting into I had to sneak off and,
here's the thing.
I'm going to sneak, and I'm going to call what I affectionately call, they had to sneak off and pull a Brother Henry.
Actually, what's
by themselves. And
here's the thing, though, that actually saved somebody's life, because one guy was so sexually frustrated because he could not have sex in this cult. He couldn't even touch himself. They weren't even allowed to touch each other.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
You know what I'm saying?
Like you couldn't touch yourself or each other.
There was this one guy who was so pent up with so much sexual frustration that he left the cult just so he could jack off. And by doing that, kept him away long enough so where the mass suicide happened, he came back and it was like, wait a minute.
Are you serious?
So the thing is, it's like, yeah, I mean, masturbation is the key to salvation for some people. Because it saved this man's life.
No, I think masturbation prevented his salvation.
It depends on how you look at it.
Jeez, oh my goodness, I didn't know that. I didn't know that this dude said, "Hey man, I'm gonna need a minute," and while he took a minute, they went on.
Again, another reason.
I did not know that.
Like I said, that's why I like listening to Last Podcast on the Left, because these three guys, they're all comedians, but at the same time, they go real in depth into these cults, and they find these random stories of people who come out of these cults. And that's probably the wildest one I've heard, because it was just like he just really wanted to rub one out and he couldn't do it. So he just left.
So I will tell you that I knew about Heaven's Gate, not from the documentary. The documentary sort of sparked my interest again in it. But I knew about it because my freshman year in college, there were two girls in my dorm who were from the town.
Rancho Santa Fe.
That the mass suicide had happened. When it hit the news, it was kind of a big deal.
So Rancho Santa Fe is in the southern half of San Diego County. And, I lived in San Diego for 5 years. The house is still there for those people out there who feel the need to go and visit the house that 39 people committed suicide. They rented it for about $7,000 a month. That same guy I was telling about earlier that left his wife and 4 kids, that was a real estate developer. He's the one that brokered that deal. And but from what I understand, the house is still there. And I don't know who's currently in it now. I don't even know if it looks the same, but you can visit the house.
Oh, well, that's creepy. I don't know that I would want to tour. I don't know that I would want to tour a house where 39 people committed suicide.
Us true crime people, I mean, you can still visit the Betty Broderick house if you really want to in San Diego. It's whatever you want to do, man. It's true. If it's true crime, that's but the house is still the same.
So again, like I said, when it comes to like red flags, like T and Doe believe in aliens, Bo and Pete believe you're going to shed this body and descend into heaven. They got all these rules. You can't touch yourself. You can't touch anybody else. All this other stuff, to the point where people are cutting their Johnsons off in order to maintain this. Because I found it ironic that they did it for one dude and it all went wrong, shocking, and they had to go to the hospital, but they couldn't explain to the doctor what was going on and why. And to me, I kind of think about it similar to when someone goes to the hospital with a gunshot wound, they have to report that to the police. I kind of feel like those rules should have applied. Like, hey, FBI, this guy just walked in here and cut his dick off. Y'all better go investigate what's going on, because this is not normal behavior.
Well, it's kind of like when I first started getting into true crime and podcasts and stuff like that. There's one podcast that actually sells a T-shirt, and I plan to buy it. And it says, "You're in a cult. Call your dad." And that's what that's the number one thing that people should just think to yourself. So, am I in a cult? Am I cutting myself off from my family? Am I like, there should be like a checklist of like a self evaluation of whether or not you're in a cult. And if you are, you need to call your dad or your parent, your brother, whatever.
Well, see, that's what I found interesting was that there were family members that were like pleading, like, please come back, like, get out of this. This isn't healthy. This isn't right. And there really isn't anything the authorities can do when you have a bunch of consenting adults saying that this is what I believe and this is it. Now, again, sort of like from a red flag perspective, if the castration piece wasn't enough, you have the Halley's Comet coming through, and this is, I guess, spring of '97 or whatever. And
actually, we're coming up on the anniversary, March 19th.
Oh, well, fantastic. So
there you
go. So with that, what I found interesting about that is, and this is real similar to what's going on today when we talk about fake news and this, that, and the third, is
the cult of Trump.
No, there were people that were claiming that they saw like an object that was trailing the comet. And these people took it as a sign that, yep, that's our sign. It's time to go. And there was no like second object that was trailing, but there were people out there suggesting that there was, and they took it and ran with it and acted on it. And one of the things that they did, which I found real interesting, was
the purchase of alien abduction insurance.
Yes, that they bought the alien insurance that would pay out $1 million a person. And my first thought is, okay, what insurance company is going to back this claim? Like, who's selling this policy?
Nobody.
Who's
I don't.
But
the policy covered the policy covered abduction, impregnation, or death by aliens.
Hold on, pause. So you telling me that some insurance company was going to pay upwards of $1 million if you got pregnant by an alien?
Yes, and I will tell you this much: the name of said insurance company is called Niche, like a niche, niche insurance, and it is an insurance provided for small, low-demand areas. And although the policies are usually required or easily available, like your automobiles and your home and your life insurance, all that, they also do difficult to obtain insurance. Body parts, alien abductions, temporary event insurance. They do it all. And this is a legit place.
How are we paying out an insurance policy if you get pregnant by an alien?
Dennis, I don't know. I'm just telling you what I see. Again, that this is a real place.
Again, red flags everywhere. What are you doing? What are you doing? And I know they're consenting adults and they believe what they want to believe and the whole night. I get it. But come on, man. At what point? What point are you so far suspended from reality that you can no longer see the forest for the trees? That you bought, I don't know, but that you and a group of people purchased insurance. See, that tells me you don't really believe in the shit. Because why would you purchase insurance if you got abducted by an alien when your whole attempt was to go be with the aliens? See, that's the bullshit I'm talking about. This doesn't make sense. This doesn't make any sense.
With cults, there is no sense and there is no logic. And you can't apply logic to an illogical thing. I mean... And that's why I think it's funny that you decided to choose Heaven's Gate, right? Like as the first one. Personally, I would have went with Jonestown. It's a little bit easier.
No, I could hold on. Hold on, pause. Like I said from the top, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole here. And I don't normally do this because I binge and I binge hard. But with this stuff, like I just came out of this with so many questions. So you're telling me you want to go be with these aliens, but just in case they take you, you want insurance to back you up. This is the most.
No, it's not so much that you want to be with it.
If cult and capitalism had a baby, it would be Heaven's Gate.
I'd reverse that. I would say the company that gave them the insurance is capitalism in
Oh,
cult.
of course, there's always a dollar to be made, but these people try to have it both ways. Just in case I go to the place I think I want to go and it turns out to be bad, I want you to pay me for my mistake.
But not even that. Who are you going to pay? Because technically you're dead because your body's actually on Earth.
No, but see, I'm coming back. See, that's the thing. See, I'm coming back to collect the check. That's why I bought the insurance. See,
that's not possible.
Who's applying logic now? Who's applying logic now?
I'm talking like, look, as a person who has sold insurance, I can tell you that having a conversation like this, that's how the conversation's going to go.
Now, moving on, I want to talk about, because this is the other thing I had a real trouble with. If you are going to shed the body and ascend into a spaceship and into heaven, how do you do that via suicide?
They don't see it as suicide. They're just seeing it as a way to get to the next level.
So they see it as a verb, like as a vehicle. They don't see it as, okay. Because I struggled with this.
It's no different than dropping your car off at the airport and getting on a plane. You're just... No. That's how they're seeing it, because in order for them to hitch the ride, they gotta leave the current ride.
That's a one. So you telling me they basically took a one way? They bought a one-way ticket, is what you're telling me?
Yeah.
So you're telling me they bought a one-way ticket, but also purchased the trip insurance?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then they did it, and they took with it one of the greatest pairs of Nikes ever created. And I can never I'll never be able to wear those Nikes. Yeah,
I'm sure Nike has that. I'm sure Nike has that design and all copies of that shoe locked up. Like, you're not going to be able to get that. The last
I checked, I think they're called Decades. I think that's what I forget what they were called now. But you can find them on eBay, but they're every bit like $1,000.
Yeah,
they're
Nike
real rare.
Decades. Now, here's another red flag. That when they found the bodies, they all had $5.75.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a reference to Huck Finn, where basically, according to Mark Twain and Huck Finn, it costs $5.75 to get into heaven. Again, another red flag. If you're promising me to get into heaven, it doesn't cost $5.75. No religious text anywhere references $5.75.
No. However, in Greek mythology, they did used to put coins on your eyes to make sure that you could make it across the river Styx. But they never specified exactly what the denomination of those coins were.
But hold on. But that's much more of a custom. That's not necessarily like religious text. You know what I'm saying? That's passed down through generations. But you took Mark Twain's word that this is what it was going to cost you to get in heaven. Again, red flag. So you're telling me my body's a caterpillar that I'm going to turn into a beautiful butterfly, and I'm going to ascend into heaven on a spaceship. But when we get there, I better have $5.75.
You got to pay the toll, man. You got it's kind of like getting on. It's kind of like getting to the river Styx. You're down there in Hades. You got to get across that river. And Chiron's has, he's the riverboat dude. You got to give him a fare to get across. Did they talk about how they were the brother of one of the original Star Trek actors?
Yes,
was a part.
Yes, he was like the only black man, the only black person in it. And I was like, why does there always have to be one? Why does
there's always one?
There's always one.
There's always one.
You know what I mean? Like, what the? Come on, man. That bothered me too. That bothered me too. Like, come on, man, get out of here. Get out of here. And I felt bad for all the family members. Denise, I felt bad for all the family members that lost a loved one behind this bullshit. Like, I really felt terrible for them. And then the other thing that bothered me too, if you think back to it, if you think back to Titanic, how the captain went down with the ship as the water was coming in and all this. This dude, the leader of the group, didn't even go out last or first. He went out in the middle. Like, let me make sure y'all really gonna do it, and then I'll go ahead and do it too. But I ain't gonna be the last one.
But you know what though? At least he went out that way, unlike Jim Jones, who waited for everybody to be poisoned forcefully and freely, who did it freely, and then how they went around to all the children and made all the children take the poison. And then he was like, you know what, guys? You know what? I don't really want to take the poison. I'll just have you shoot me. And so he had somebody else shoot him.
Good job, tough guy Tony.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, hey, he might have went out halfway through, but you know what? At least he went, and he went the same way.
And so the other thing, my other big takeaway out of this was that there were people who used to be members. They were former members who caught wind of what happened. Mm-hmm. And then after they caught wind of what happened, they felt a certain level of guilt that they didn't take the trip with their group.
Right.
And they struggled with this. And then some of them eventually took their own lives. And to me, it just demonstrated how strong the belief system was within them.
When I look at that as this is what happens when you miss out on the fun and you decide, so I would like to be a part of the fun. That's how I looked at it. I mean, does it sound cold and wrong? Maybe. But I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it was.
I just felt really bad. Like, of all the people that I felt terrible for, it was those people that I felt the worst about, because like they were so indoctrinated in it that they couldn't comprehend any other way other than to join the group that way. And I just that one really bothered me a little bit.
Well, I mean, in the way that they did it, I mean, they used applesauce and something else to take it, and it's applesauce. Oh, applesauce or pudding, and then of course they washed it down with some vodka, and to take it with a barbiturate, phenobarbital. It looking back on it, I mean, when I first heard about Heaven's Gate, when I first learned about Heaven's Gate, because you were in college, that would have put me in like 8th grade or 7th grade or something like that. So even back then, I remember hearing about it and was kind of like, who commits suicide? Like, who freely commits suicide? Like, that just doesn't make, like, why would I do that with a group? Suicide, I don't know about you, but suicide seems rather like a personal thing. That's like a solo kind of thing. So for somebody to sit there and say, you know what, guys, we're all going to go together, that was a foreign concept to me. But if I had to try and make sense of the entire thing, these were people who were following a person who was completely having a crisis of identity and a crisis of faith, and someone who was not
pretty clear. Like they preyed on the weak-minded. Even though these are really smart, intelligent, rational people, they were sort of weak-minded, and they were buying what these people were selling.
Yeah, but even Marshall Applewhite himself was weak-minded in the sense that he never really fully came to terms with the fact that he was gay, the fact that he became a musical teacher, and every time he was teaching students, he would be told he could not come back because he had an affair with a male college student. He had an affair with a couple 17-year-olds who were deemed adult worthy, I guess, or whatever. He had too many run-ins with the same sex but yet was
And back then,
constantly
and that sort of level of repressiveness, kind of pushed him in that direction because you couldn't be open like that.
exactly.
And
And
it just,
then
and that's the other thing too, Denise. It really made me think like it is not good to sort of suppress who you really are. Like you need to
no,
live in your truth, who you really are, because I don't know, you might go off and start a cult.
hmm
I would much rather you be openly gay or openly transgender or whatever than to go start a cult.
yes. Now the thing is, I will say is about Marshall Applewhite is that those tapes that came out afterwards where he's talking, his eyes are super big and he looks crazy as hell.
Oh, those
Um,
videos, those videos are, whew, man,
according
oh
to
man.
according to the podcast, last podcast on the left, they were talking about how people who knew Marshall Applewhite said that yeah, his eyes look like he's a bit crazy in these videos, but in reality, those weren't eyes of a crazy person. Those were eyes of someone who loved and cared about other people. Personally, I don't get that feeling, but you know, a lot of people said that even when he would be out and about and talking about the gospel and stuff, that people would be either engaged, and then there'd be others who would be like, you know what, I'm cool. There was one guy that they approached. He was like a professor that they found on I think it was the University of Houston, University of Texas at Houston, something like that. And they sat there with him for hours trying to get him to come on board with them. And the guy was just like, it sounds great. It really, I mean, it sounds like something I'd be for, but he couldn't get past Applewhite's eyes. He said his eyes were weird, they were creepy, and he said no. So I guess it's all into interpretation. But when if I think that if Doe had lived, if Nettles had lived, would we have transitioned to the hey, let's all jump on the comet and
Well,
go?
see, I'm glad you said that because at the end of the documentary, they talk to her daughter, and her daughter has all these letters that basically allude to the fact that I know this is all fucking cuckoo, but I'm in this now, so I gotta ride this out. Because you're supposed to give up all your worldly possessions and cut off your
Mm-hmm.
friends and family, and you're supposed to live this sort of life and follow the rules and follow the process. But she's
Mm-hmm.
writing letters back home to her daughter about I love you, hope you're doing well in school, this and that. So it tells me like rationally, like you're able to comprehend, and then you purposefully made this choice. And you making a choice is one thing. You
Mm-hmm.
leading people down a path is something different.
I agree. I agree. And I think that when it comes to the way that, like, in the last podcast, they talked about how when the mass suicide happened, and of course the media came and they started dubbing it as the first, like, .com, new age technology kind of cult. And but in reality, you go to heavensgate.com. In reality, yeah, they had their material out there on the internet and things like, whatever, but they actually did not get any new members they got one new member from the site. Everything else was word of mouth.
Well, that was the last thing I was going to say about Heaven's Gate is they left the website up and active in case anybody wanted to join them. So like it's a website, you can go see
Mm-hmm.
it for
It's still
yourself.
there. It's
Like
straight, it's
right
straight
now.
out of '97.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, it's
it looks like it was like built on an AOL platform for sure. I
yeah.
mean, dated isn't the word. But just yeah, overall, I just had questions because I'm like, there's just so many red flags with this that come on, man. Like it, like at what point do you? At what point do you just come on, man? Just this
I
ain't it.
think I really think that I mean, after the suicides, I mean, yeah, there were series of, like, there were some copycat folks that tried to do it as well, and you know so on and so forth. But I think when it comes down to it, I think that Heaven's Gate, when you think about the '90s and you think about cults, Heaven's Gate is probably right up there. I don't really see any other cult that has that kind of notoriety, with the exception of the Branch Davidians. But of course, you don't consider that a cult. That's a cult. Okay, that's a cult.
Well, that's another episode.
We'll have to do that.
We'll hash that out in another episode.
That's a cult.
So
you know.
so that's Heaven's Gate, and thank you, because I had questions and I needed to get them out. So now I want to switch gears here.
NXIVM.
The other rabbit hole I went down was about NXIVM. And NXIVM was different than Heaven's Gate because
it was about sex.
Well, yeah, partly, but before I get to that, it was different because they sold it as sort of self-help teachings, like you can really better your life, you can make a difference in the lives of other people by following this. It's like a mix of things. Like if you buy these classes, like, and Scientology works that way, where you got to buy these classes to go up the level, but as you go up the level you get more enlightenment, and you could bring people along the way. It's a whole business model. But logically, what they were teaching you in this ESP program, I think is Executive Success Program, I think it was called, it worked. Like logically, this makes sense. If I put these two and two things together, or I can't reach my potential because I have these limiting beliefs where I put these doubts in my head and this, that, and the third, and if I can overcome those, I can achieve greater things to be the person I want to be and not have anxieties. And like, it worked. Like logically, like it made sense. What got me was the deeper you got into it, you would get so deep that you couldn't get out. Like there is no off ramp. There's no exit strategy with this. Like the deeper you got in, the more difficult it was to get out. And that the leader, for as smart as he was the word that kept coming to mind for me was he's a weasel. Like he was a greasy weasel, and if there was a weasel in human form, it would be this guy. What was his name? I can't remember his name.
Keith Raniere.
I knew it was something with an R. This guy. Listen, I only know two Keiths in my life, and I like both of them.
Do I know more than one Keith?
I know two Keiths in my life, and I like them both.
We got a cousin Keith. I think
that's right. Dope. We have a cousin named Keith, and I have a fraternity brother named Keith. That's the list. I don't know no other Keiths, and now I don't want to know any more other Keiths at this point. But the sad part was he was the type of guy. You ever met somebody that was too smart for their own good?
Yes. Sometimes I look in the mirror and see myself.
Like, stop that. You are not a deviant person that way. Stop that. I've known you all your life. You are not a deviant person. Stop that.
Are you sure? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, stop that. But so NXIVM, and hold on, matter of fact, let me turn it over to you to explain what NXIVM is.
Okay, so NXIVM actually reminds me of when I was in college, when people used to come around and start selling me things on the importance of prepaid legal and how I can use prepaid legal to, help make sure my friends have legal representation, but they have to be a part of it too to have legal representation. That's how I look at NXIVM. Only the difference is that it's about self-improvement. I'm selling self-improvement programs. And in order for me to be successful, I got to have you be in it so that way you can be successful, but you got to add other people. It's a pyramid scheme. At the end of the day, NXIVM is
that's insulting to pyramid schemes. It is a multi-level marketing company.
Whatever. It is a pyramid scheme. Okay? Sometimes you just got to call shit what it is. It is a pyramid scheme. Okay? First and foremost. But in any case, it started out, like you said, on paper, it sounded legit. That, these self-improvement programs are there to enlighten your life, enlighten other people's lives. And, you're gonna be able to transcend, as to take a word from our Heaven's Gate conversation, into a understanding of not only yourself, but of others, and so on and so forth. But then shit starts to go downhill. And I know we talked about red flags in Heaven's Gate. This also had red flags. And when I first
Yes.
heard about NXIVM, the biggest red flag for me was the fact when I have to start calling Keith Raniere Vanguard. And
Yes.
no, I'm
Yeah.
not calling you. I'm not calling
So,
somebody
so, so
Vanguard.
just to be clear, the more classes that you paid for, the deeper you got into this, they stopped referring to him as the founder. They started to refer to him as something called Vanguard. And then the lady that taught most of the classes was referred to as prefect. And they had
Yes.
like logical reasons for this. And they would give you these sashes to wear to sort of mark your way up the ladder and how far you got and all of this sort of thing.
Yeah.
But again, it's a pyramid scheme because in order to get that high, you had to buy so many classes, you had to become enlightened, and then you had to turn around and recruit more people and train them and practice on them in order to climb up the. So it was a bit of a hustle.
But at the same time, it's just like in the sense of comparing and contrasting to Heaven's Gate, just like Bo and Pete got it from little Bo Peep, Vanguard came from a fucking video game. It came from an arcade game.
Yes, he stole that from an arcade game in his basement.
You know, so it's kind of like, yeah, these two cults might seem different, but on a certain level, there's the same. There are still red flags here that are all.
And the other thing I would say too, and what makes them different was they were also backed financially by the heirs to the Seagram's liquor fortune. Mm-hmm. So they were backed by two women who were heirs to the fortune. So they had leverage in a way that Heaven's Gate didn't. Heaven's Gate just kind of is a ragtag bunch of people, misfits that created a belief system and got some people to sort of join it. This is like a structured sort of thing masquerading as a pyramid scheme. And so the deeper you got into it, what became clear, and what I appreciate about the NXIVM documentary was it was in 9 parts. So the first part of it, I'm watching it, and I'm saying to myself, okay, logically, this makes sense. It's self-help. What you're teaching makes sense. You can put 2 and 2 equals 4. Like, I get it. And you can leverage it to help other people. Like, okay, so if you can find a way to make $1 off it, okay, cool. Like, I'm with that. Mm-hmm. But then somebody starts noticing, like, hey, something's not right here. And then they start putting the stuff together. And then what eventually it turns into is if you were a male, the highest you could probably go was get to like the executive board. But if you're on the executive board, like they had all these spin-off companies underneath NXIVM. Mm-hmm. So it was NXIVM as like a holding company that had all these other spin-off companies based on the teachings of the self-help and all that, right? Mm-hmm. And they had all these little groups within it, like the Society of Protectors, where it was a bunch of men who were going to go out in the world and do good and make the human race better and this, that, and the third. And they had like female classes and female power empowerment groups, and it all makes sense. But as a female, you could go a different path, and that's where the shit starts to go sideways. Because ultimately, you could work your way up into a secret group within NXIVM called DOS. And once they got to that, I said to myself, okay, the one thing I noticed immediately was there were no black people at this level. Because once you introduce the concept of DOS and this whole master-slave concept,
We're out.
I'm out.
Nope, I'm good.
As a black man, you're not about to get me to call you my master. You ain't about to get me to say that to you.
Yeah, and you know, maybe it's just because of who we are, of who our parents are. I can smell a pyramid scheme a mile away, so I'm not trying. Like I'm not even gonna get to. I know I'm not getting to that level.
Real quick. Do you remember that time that dude came to the house to try to sell these encyclopedias, and we had to go through the whole presentation with him, and at the end, Dad was like, "Nah, I'm not buying that shit." And then the dude asked Mom if he could get a ride home, and Mom was like, "Yeah, I don't think my husband's gonna go for that." So he asked to borrow the phone, to use the phone so he could call to get a ride.
Oh my God. like that. I don't remember that, but I do remember the time that the cops called the house and Dad pretended that he couldn't hear him and hung up on the cops.
Oh, that's
So I
fantastic.
do.
That
Yeah.
sounds like him. Okay, I digress.
Anyway, continue.
So the DOS thing, the way it worked, or the way that I understood it, so keep me honest, is that it was a secret society of women who were trying to do this whole empowerment thing and really be devoted to the cause, because the men have their own group. They wanted to have their own group. But what ends up happening is that this whole, to get in, you have to be recruited. It's a secret society, so all we ask is trust. And in this, you get recruited by another female. That female is considered, the one who recruits you is considered your master. And that and that you agree to this, and the idea is it's conceptual. It's not really slavery. I'm not really your master. We're just working these metaphors out. These are the terms that we use at this level, but no one owns you, this sort of thing. And so you agree to this. The idea that, okay, I'm going to be your slave and you're my master and I'll do what he asked me to do. And then it starts into, okay, so to prove your loyalty, to prove that you are really down for the cause, because this is like a secret thing between us and you have to demonstrate your commitment, you have to give us a tribute. And that tribute basically is blackmail. You have to give me some incriminating stuff, nude photos, passwords to your social media accounts.
Look, man, I don't even remember what half of those are, so I can't be. You know what I mean? At this level.
Like you talking shit about your family, like you get blackmailed to give them stuff, and then you have to respond to your master like within like 30 seconds, and you have to ask for permission for shit like, may I have 25 calories today? Shit like that. And then you have to keep continuing to do this to demonstrate.
I wish a motherfucker would tell me I can have 20. Like, you know what?
Well, that's what was crazy. They were texting pictures of food like, master, can I please have 92 calories? And it would be like 3 rice cakes.
Look, man, that's on some other. That's
because like one of the first things they did was to say, to demonstrate your commitment, you need to drop like 20 pounds. So man, like these women are like not eating, not drinking, none of this, right?
That's so like some R. Kelly wife shit, like that R. Kelly, like what R. Kelly used to do to his wife. Like, nah.
So once you get to the point, where you've done all this and you've demonstrated your commitment, then they have like a ceremony where you get to meet all of the other slaves that are sort of in your pod, right? So you're all sitting in a room blindfolded and naked. And then you take your mask off and you realize, oh, so-and-so and so-and-so's in here. Okay. So then to demonstrate your commitment fully, what they do is they came up with a symbol, and the symbol represented like, this is the mountain, and the mountain is like the highest peak in life, and this is like the river that runs underneath it, and the river represents like the flow of thought and ideas and all of this. And then the idea was you would get not tattooed, you would get branded with like what is it, Denise? Like it wasn't a poker. What did they use? I can't remember.
It was a brander. It was a
almost like you get almost like you brand cattle. Like you would get branded that way, but you would get branded like
with his initials. It was his initials.
Hold on. Excuse me, I'm gonna get to that. But you would get branded, but you would get branded by your woo-ha. Like that's how it would work.
You ain't coming in my hoop. You ain't coming through my hole, man.
No. It would be like on the inside of your head.
That's too close. That's too close.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
You stay the hell away from my hoo-ha.
Yeah, like right by your woo-ha. Like that's you know what I mean? And so
that's personal.
You would get that, and then listen, there's no nurse there, there's no anesthesia. This is just like hot flesh burning in the air. And you naked, now. You out here naked as the day you was born, and they putting this on you.
This is why black people aren't in it, because I'm planning to kill somebody. I'm just
Well, that's
okay.
what I'm saying.
Right
Like that jumped out to me very quickly. That okay, there are no black people at this level, and now I understand why there are no black people at this level.
And
And that's
half the
not.
people,
And
and you know
listen,
what? And
and listen,
people who come out of this, I guarantee you, will probably marry somebody black because they understand.
and listen. And I want to be clear. I'm not saying that there aren't white people that got to this level and be like, "Oh no, I'm not going for this shit," because I know that there were. I'm just saying it was very noticeable that there was not even black folks. There were no minorities of any kind, which
Not today, Satan.
which confirms my suspicion that people who have been oppressed know this bullshit when they see it.
That's what I'm saying. Like I mean,
no.
Like you want me to do what? Oh no, man,
Right.
I'm cool.
So then it comes out after the fact that what's really happening here is the brand that they get. If you turn it to the side, it's the initials of the leader. It is Keith Raniere's initials that these women have branded into him.
And now I got to figure out how to get this shit off my hoo-ha shit.
But you can't, because all it does is keloid up. You can't. It's for life.
Oh, you know. See. Okay, so here's the thing though. So what DOS stands for is actually from Latin.
Yes.
And it's Dominus Opusque Sorium. And as somebody who personally would love to learn Latin, I felt like this was an insult. Like, this isn't how I want to learn Latin. I don't want to learn Latin from a cult. It's not. I don't want to associate this now. But too late. So I'm with you. Because they were using, it was like they were carterizing. They were using a carterizing pen. If that makes sense. I didn't realize that there was but it was like it was a pen. And apparently the person who performed this thing, she is not in prison. She is still walking the streets. She is still free. She is a medical doctor who is now currently fighting the state of California to keep her medical license.
Hold on. Pause. So the woman that was actually doing the branding is a real doctor.
Is a real doctor.
And is out here walking the streets.
Right now. Yep. And people are trying to get her medical license taken away because she technically, I do believe it. You didn't know this? This was on the nightly news literally 4 days ago.
This is why I'm talking to you.
This was on the nightly news literally 4 days ago. Lester Holt brought this into my family room. So she is fighting the state of California to keep her medical license because of what her role in NXIVM. They are saying that she violated her Hippocratic oath as a doctor to do no harm.
Yes, you take an ethical oath as a doctor.
And so she feels that because she was not treating anyone as a patient, she did not technically violate that Hippocratic oath. So it's still an ongoing thing. We don't know who's going to win this. I'm pretty sure, at least personally, she's going to lose her medical license.
And she should.
That was like within like the last like 3 or 4 days. But
so
then, what got me though about NXIVM was that first off, the number of actors that were a part of NXIVM.
Yeah. Hold on. I just want to finish this thought real quick.
Okay, go for it.
So after you sort of get branded and now we know like you really in this, and this is really old boy's initials in this. This is, for lack of a better way to describe it, the stamp of approval for you to get to the final level, kind of like a video game, where you get these little assignments where your job in the assignment is to seduce Keith Raniere. And then at that point, you would go and sleep with the leader. But at this point, you've lost so much weight. You are sleep deprived. You are not of sound mind and body. And he's just in here knocking them down like dominoes.
Like, who wants that kind of sex? You're a piece of shit. You're a piece of shit. You're a piece of shit to take that kind. Like,
listen. It's clear he has a type. That's clear.
Yes, malnourished and anorexic is definitely something that we want.
It's a type. And so what I found interesting was the lady that I mentioned earlier who was teaching the class is called the prefect. I think her name is Nancy Salzman, I think her name was.
Mm-hmm.
her daughter was one of the people that was recruiting these girls into this secret sex cult.
Mm-hmm.
And then she had been sleeping with that dude for 20 years. And that dude kept her on the hook by saying, I'll give you a baby. And then he'd snatch it away and said, no, I won't. Meanwhile, she's funneling women up to him long after he stopped saying, I was going to give you a baby. See, and see, this is where it was different than Heaven's Gate for me, because it's like, oh no, not only is this a cult, this is a level of a criminal conspiracy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Mixed under the guise of a pyramid scheme, backed by the heirs to the Seagram's fortune. Like, this shit way bigger than Nino Brown.
Well, that, and what really got me about the whole thing, as far as the cult level, is that the people that there was one person they recruited who was actually of royal blood. And that's when shit really got real for me, because they got the chick from her name was like Oxenberg.
So yeah, I'm glad you brought her up, because I wanted to talk about her, because she was fascinating in this.
Catherine Oxenberg.
Catherine Oxenberg was on Dynasty in the 80s. Her mother is second cousins with Prince Charles, like the Prince Charles of England.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so her daughter was one of these girls that got branded and was actually out here recruiting other girls to be in this. And so she's in a dilemma because she just wants her daughter back. But in order to get her daughter back, who is a victim, she has to basically convince the feds that this is a secret sex cult and it's sex trafficking, and that might put her daughter behind bars. And and I found her story absolutely fascinating, because as a parent, she was so desperate to get her child back that she was willing to take the risk that she might send her own child to prison if it meant her child was free of this man and his teachings. I found that dynamic. I found it fascinating.
Yeah, like her mom, her name's Catherine, and her daughter's name was like Ingrid or Indira or
India.
There it is. Yeah. So like, I mean, when you think about, like, when I heard about it, I was just like, so you mean to tell me we got royal blood out here recruiting niggas? Like, like of course we can do this. Like, can you imagine being somebody who last week was waiting tables as a struggling actress, and then all of a sudden, like, the third cousin of Prince Charles of Wales was like, "Yo, you want to have
well, that's the thing. So they had they had chapters. They had like offices around the country, real similar to Scientology. And one of them was in Seattle, and that one got shut down because the people who led that one, along with other leaders in the organization, started to realize, and this is like 2009. They started to realize that, hey, we're noticing that all the people that have influence and decision making in this company are all females, and you appear to be sleeping with all of them. So we need to do something about this. So Keith Raniere, in his weaseling ways, figures out a way to appease these people long enough to get them all wiped out and replaced, and then, much like Lance Armstrong, he sues these people into oblivion to protect the institution. And then these people go off in silence, to the point where one woman who sued them and won was so broke she had to represent herself in court. And she won. I mean, that tells you how smart some of the people who get involved with this were, because, again, it made sense on the paper until all of the nefarious activity sort of comes into play. But the acting thing's important because a lot of films get made up in Vancouver. And these actors were leaving Vancouver, coming down to Seattle to take these classes. So once all of that gets shut down, a woman who rose up through the ranks because she believed what it was that was going on and thought it was legit, lobbied and got backing to open a branch in Vancouver. And now they've got all of these actors, coming in, taking these classes. And this is where it starts to feel real Scientology a little bit this way. And that's what I really found interesting was like, this was like Heaven's Gate belief systems and mixed with like Scientology pay strategy and blackmailing of the secrets. You start sprinkle in a little sex cult action, and then you've got people who are committing criminal activity where we're branding each other against our will. There's stories about these women are getting tied down on these benches naked and all of this. Like, it's like, meanwhile, this dude is selling himself like he's some Indian guru that has all the knowledge in the world, and you should come to me for advice. And didn't you find it weird that they always went for a walk, and that walk was at night, and that's how it was real mafia-like, like no telephones and shit. Like, we'll just go for a walk. Hey, because everybody kept saying the whole 9 episodes, they're like, do you want to go for a walk?
Always.
And then what I found is people were recording the conversations while they were walking.
Well, think about it. It's easier to record while you're on the walk because you're not fidgeting. You're not, you're alone. It makes it's a basic tactic,
right?
So to speak.
So the reason why this all comes out is because some of the people start to break off and defect. And what I found, one of the actors where this kind of first starts, like, hey, this is kind of an issue, is a woman by the name of Bonnie. Bonnie's in it pretty deep. And then Bonnie starts to put 2 and 2 together, and she's starting to have an issue. So she leaves it, but her husband's still in it. And Bonnie, I found interesting because she was in a couple of the Star Wars movies, not the original ones, but the next ones that came out, like episodes like 2 and 3 or whatever. In fact, she is the woman at the end of the movie where he becomes Darth Vader, where where Obi-Wan drops Luke Skywalker off. She's the woman holding the baby.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That's who she is. So her and her husband start to have problems because she left. She's like, you're not listening to me. This is some bullshit. And her husband, who's like a director, I think he made a documentary called like what the F do you know or do we know or something about quantum physics or something. And so he starts asking questions but can't get any answers. And then all of a sudden he goes back to his wife and says, okay, tell me what you saw. Then he starts to put 2 and 2 together and believes it. And then he leaves. And then the woman I mentioned that started the Vancouver chapter, she was one of these women that got branded, but she didn't sleep with the leader because they told her after the fact, we got you to be in it because you are one of the best sellers of the company and we needed you to recruit other women to get in it. That's why we asked you. But now she's mad because she's married to a guy that was part of this and didn't know what was going on. And on one of the recordings, with the lady that was promised the baby that didn't get the baby, she said, how am I supposed to go to my husband? He's never going to go anywhere near my woo-ha again because Keith Raniere's initials are tattooed near my woo-ha.
I mean, there's always adoption. Artificial insemination.
Listen, it was so batshit crazy. And meanwhile, this dude is selling himself like this guru and knower of all things. And then when it hits the fan and they sort of get raided by the feds, this guy flees to Mexico.
Of course he does.
And then they bust him right when he is about to initiate more women into this thing, like in like a group sex sort of situation.
Yeah, because he created a second cult. And if I remember,
best of the best?
No, it was something about Aristotle, the Knights of Aristotle or some shit like that. And he did it like in 2014. And then when he fled to Mexico, because see, I picked up on NXIVM after he fled to Mexico. Last podcast on the left did a quick side story on NXIVM right after they caught him in Mexico. And they actually interview one of the reporters who was actually approached by NXIVM to write stories about them and then tried to indoctrinate him or indoctrinate them into the cult. And the journalist, and I cannot think of what his name was. I think it was either Frank or James. I can't remember this. Can't remember now. But like they tried to get him to come in, and at first he was like, "Oh, okay." He was like, "But he's like, so what do you want me to write about?" And they were like, "Well, before we pay you to do the work, we want you to come up to Albany, New York, for an unpaid 10-week internship to see how you like us first." And the journalist was just like, "Wait a minute, I thought you just wanted me to write stories about what you guys are doing up here. You said nothing about you want me to go to Albany, New York, rural Albany, what? Why?" So then he started asking questions, and then that's when they started to be like, "Okay, well, we can't tell you everything that we're doing. You won't be able to, to know until you get up here." And he was like, "No, I'm not going to Albany, New York. Tell me what I need so I can start writing." And eventually he started putting two and two together. And so then he saw that other people in his area, like different journalists or whatnot, were also being approached by Rainier. And so then that's when he was just like, "You know what? Don't do it. Don't do it." And so every time somebody he knew got caught up in NXIVM, he would reach out to them or have somebody else reach out to them and say, "You need to call him because he knows that this is a cult. You need to get out, and you need to get out now."
Yeah.
So
yeah. So
I forget what that guy's name is.
So fast forward, dude gets arrested in Mexico, extradited back. They have a trial. He's charged with racketeering and mail fraud and sex trafficking and all of these crimes. And so he gets convicted, and this is how you knew it was real, or this is how you knew it was serious, I should say. They deliberated for less than 6 hours. He was convicted on all charges. He was sentenced to 120 years and sent to the Supermax in Colorado.
Hey, where the Supermax ADX Florence, also known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, featuring prisoners such as Bernie Madoff, the head of the Nubian Nation, the Boston bomber, Dylan Ruff, Woody Harrelson's dad,
the Oklahoma City bombers, the Utah bomber, like El Chapo was there, like this is where they send the worst of the worst to the Supermax. That's where this guy is.
He's never getting out. He's never getting out.
And what was crazy to me was not the prison sentence, not where they sent him. It's that he was convicted on all charges in less than a day. Basically, a half-day meeting convicted him on all charges.
It says here that his earliest possible release date for Keith Rainier is June 27, 2120.
Yeah, I can't even think of that.
That is over 100 years from now.
I mean, honestly, I have a hard time remembering yesterday. So the idea
that's 99 years from now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 120 years from now.
Yeah, so the idea that I would... No,
and he got hit with a $1.75 million fine.
Yeah. And so again, and I just found it fascinating because it was like this conglomerate of different elements of things I'd seen in life all sort of come together in a package where they were really selling it. And the sad part was it was really helping people. Like they showed one video of this man that suffered from Tourette's. But by going through the classes and the teachings and the whole nine, he had cured himself of Tourette's. And that's what was frustrating to me because it actually worked. It was helping people. And then you went and took it.
Fucked it up.
You basically went to the dark side with it. And
what's that old saying? Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah, that's exactly what this was. It was absolute power. And then what was scary to me was all the people around him protecting him. Because typically in a situation like this, you would expect it to be a bunch of men that were enclosed around him, that were protecting him. But in fact, it was the opposite. It was all women.
Mm-hmm.
It was all women that he was surrounded with that were providing protection for him, to the point where now all these women are now facing federal charges.
Yeah.
Well.
And even and then the other thing too, that that, you know, I don't know if they talked about this or not, but the same person who negotiated his prison sentence is also the same person who helped negotiate the prison sentence of Jeffrey Epstein, Alan Dershowitz.
Oh yeah. Oh, hold on, say that again.
So the person so Alan Dershowitz was helped negotiate the prison sentence. So like basically, he instructed, actually, let me read. Rainier instructed his followers to solicit the assistance of Alan Dershowitz, the attorney who successfully negotiated a nonpartisan agreement of Jeffrey Epstein. So he gave them false names of people, he was allegedly calling to prison officials and call recipients employed on burner phones.
So you mean to tell me? You see, this is again. It's just like all these things mashed up in one. So you went and got Epstein's lawyer to negotiate for you, because you're basically trafficking in the same behavior. The only difference is these women aren't under 18. So you thought you were cool.
Yes. And Alan Dershowitz, man, I mean, he's the snake that just keeps on showing up in places I really don't like that person.
Yeah, so
I strongly dislike Alan Dershowitz.
Again, the show I watched is called The Vow, and it's on HBO if anybody wants to check it out. And it's long. I mean, it's like 9 episodes. So again, like I said, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole. I knocked it out in one day.
Oh my! What else did you do that day?
Nothing. I ordered dinner, and I jumped on the NXIVM train. And again, the whole time I was texting you like, I can't believe the shit that I'm seeing.
And I'm just, that's right. Because then I was like, I don't understand why you're just now realizing that cults are a thing. Because I mean, wait. I like we can have a whole conversation.
It's not that I didn't know they were a thing. Again, like I said at the top, I'm fascinated by the journey of the human psyche to go from, this makes sense, to, these are red flags, but it still makes sense, to, here's more red flags, but I guess it's okay, to full-blown cult member. That's where at some point, when does your gut kick in? When does your intuition kick in and say, nah, bro, this ain't it?
And I think that's part of the reason why I think that if you wanted to continue to have this conversation on different cults, why some cults, when you go through them, start to help, I won't say start to help answer these questions, but depending on what cult you're covering, you can understand how quickly you can fall into the abyss. Because Jonestown is probably the one cult where, you know, that was probably the easiest to fall in, because he used, Jim, not to get too deep into it, but Jim Jones was a Church of Christ member who used the concept of the Church of Christ to bring more members in, and then twisted it into his own controlling way, and was able to pay people during services of church for healing. And all of a sudden, you went from having cancer and a broken jaw to, oh my gosh, he's walking and stuff like that. And then to have these situations where these communities where he began to start shutting down your connections to your family, and then to take everybody and go to Guyana. And so that his cult is probably the best example of how you can get sucked in and not understand that you are way beyond the realm of no return until it is too late.
Well, I'll just say this. If I go down that rabbit hole again, I will let you know, and you can come back on and we can discuss it.
That's fine. If you want me to go on that train with you, by all means.
Yeah, well, I'm clearly going to need a passenger because, again,
you need a tour guide.
I have questions. I want to know why you think getting a man's initial, even though they didn't know, why you think getting branded by your woo-ha is in your best interest.
Why? It could be, I can't wait till we do this again because I want your thoughts on black cults because, most of the times you hear about cults and it's generally about white people, but there are black cults out there and they are just as
now
crazy,
hold on, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. I don't know anything about a black cult at all. I don't know anything about a black cult. It's a foreign concept to me.
I know.
Because I imagine for a lot of people, their first thought is black people don't do cults. They're not wired that way. But what I'm saying is this: without no prior knowledge at all, something about a black cult tells me it's going to be much more militant and hardcore in their teachings and beliefs.
Yes. However, the two most famous ones, one is a spinoff of the Nation of Islam.
Of course.
Okay. And then the other one, I'm not even really sure where it came from, but it is on some real weird shit that involves pyramids and the sky and not aliens, but like the stars and, it's weird. It's weird. But that guy is sitting at ADX Florence.
Oh, I have to learn more about him.
Yes.
Hey, listen, if they sent you to the Supermax, you've got my attention.
Yes, he was the leader. I believe the was the Nubian Nation of Moors. I think that's what they call it. The Nubian Nation.
Yeah, if he's in the Supermax, you have my attention, sir. I'd like to know more about you.
Yes, his name is Dwight York. Dwight York, also known in the streets as Malachi York or Issa al-Hadi al-Mahidi or Dr. York. He is a convicted child molester. So if you would like to learn.
Let me do some research on that, then maybe I'll have you back. The only thing I'll say in closing, outside of thank you for walking me through the nexus that is American cult life. So thank you for walking me through this and answering some of the questions that I have. Because I feel so much better. I needed to talk to somebody about what I saw.
I do what I can.
So I want to thank you for walking me through this. So in closing, do you have anything you'd like to share with the people relative to what you know about cults?
About cults. If you suspect that you're in a cult, call somebody. If you feel like you need a checklist, call somebody. If you begin to just second guess yourself, if you haven't talked to your mama in probably a week or so, you might want to reach out to somebody.
Call your mama. Call your mama. Your mama knows that you involved in some bullshit. Call your mama.
Yes, I will put it like this. I personally have at least 4 friends, and you included, family. I got at least 4 friends and at least 5 family members that know that if they haven't heard from me in an X amount of time, shit might be popping off.
Oh, I will find you. I would. I will find you.
Be that family member for that person in your life.
Listen. You've seen me do this before. I will kick in a door. I will find you. I will find you. I will get you out of there, and I in my Cedric voice, I wish a motherfucker would run up on me.
That's what I'm saying. So like, be that person for the person to be that person for someone else in your life. And I've told my friends personally, if I ever hear that I have to come into some room and get you off some weird ass shit, I'm gonna beat your ass as soon as we get out.
And the sad part is that you get out of it and people still believe it because the belief system is ingrained in them. It's just so strong. So I just want to say in closing, and again, thank you for coming on because this I really appreciate it. This means a lot because, like I said, I had questions. I just want to say in closing that you cannot ascend into heaven via an alien body in a spaceship. I want to make that clear.
Nor is getting branded with a person's initials near your hoo ha. That's not. That's
yeah,
not
and don't get initials of any man branded on you near your woo ha in an effort to satisfy the process of being initiated, and don't allow people to blackmail you. Just a little public service announcement. Put that out there. So with that,
if it sounds too good to be true, y'all.
Hey, those are just fundamental rules of life. If it sounds too good to be true, run. So
the
with
opposite
that
direction.
Yeah, hard. So with that, Denise, thanks for jumping on and answering my questions. And if I read up on Dwight York and the Black Cults, I will have you on speed dial to talk through what it is that I witnessed, because I know I'm going to have questions about that.
It's a ride, that's for sure.
All right. Thanks.
All right, guys. Thank you.